Well, welcome everyone. It's exactly 11:31. I am Lorena Mosquera with LWNH Business Solutions, and we are welcoming you here to the NJBIA Women's Leaders Council. We're going to get started in just about a couple of seconds. I just want to make sure that everyone's logging on. Everyone logs in at exactly 11:30. So I want to just give everyone a little bit of time to make sure that they log on. And then I'll go through a couple of the housekeeping. It looks like everyone is coming on. All right, a couple of housekeeping tips before we actually get started. If you guys are joining us for the first time, I'm welcoming you. And please make sure you realize that we are being recorded. Everyone is muted for the duration of the first part of the program, and then we will of course break out into our breakout rooms to do our networking. If you can switch from gallery to speaker view, that would be the most efficient way of watching this. So on the upper right hand corner, you should be seeing a little square that says view. If you click on that, you actually want to go to speaker view, and once you are on speaker view, you will only see the folks that I actually put on the spotlight. So it's kind of nice. I get to control who's being watched at this moment. So please make sure you put on the speaker view. If anything else comes up, feel free to put anything in the chat because we will be monitoring the questions. Kate and I will be monitoring all the questions to make sure we get back to you. And I think with that, that's all the housekeeping. I think everyone else will just kind of hop on in and we'll make sure that we let them into the breakout rooms. Again, welcome. I am Lorena Mosquera, President of LWNH Business Solutions. I am very happy to welcome you all. Our fearless leader, Roseanne DeTorres, who is the chair of the Women's Leaders Program, is unfortunately unable to be here today. So we, of course, miss her, but we wish her luck at her trial that she's at today. We, of course, have the fabulous Kate Conroy with us, and I'm going to add her to the spotlight as well. There is Kate. Kate is, of course, with NJBIA, and we are happy that we are able to be part of the New Jersey Business Industry Association is the full name, right? The Women Business Leaders Council, and we are very happy to be sponsored by PSENG. And I'm actually going to be sharing, we've been upgrading a little bit so that now we have a couple of slides that we're able to share when we actually do have our sponsors. So as you can see, we are sponsored by not just NJM Insurance Group and PSENG and Investors Bank, but we also have event partners, which is the Taurus and the George, which is Roseanne, and Paradigm Marketing. And I believe Vicki Hart will be joining us just shortly to give us our marketing minute as well. But before we get started, I'm going to hand it on over to Kate so that she can kind of welcome you guys a little bit.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much, Lorena. Welcome, everybody. We at NJBIA are thrilled that this group continues to grow and thrive. For those of you who are new to NJBIA, we are the largest statewide business association in the country, representing approximately 1 million jobs in the state of New Jersey. If you're interested in more info on us, I'll drop the website in the chat along with my contact info. Feel free to be in touch and we can get you whatever you need. Quick save the date, our 7th annual Women Business Leaders Forum is set for September 15th through the 17th. Watch this space for more info on that. I will get out a link as soon as we are ready. And with that, I will turn it back over to Lorena. Thank you.
Thank you, my dear. Let me remove that spotlight here for a second. All right, so I'm working 2 roles today, so you'll have to bear with me if there's a little bit of a pause as I'm transitioning from one screen to another. We're, of course, so thankful that you were able to join us today. Again, our co-chair, I am just the co-chair, and our fabulous leader, Roseanne, is unable to make it with us, but we are very happy that you are all with us this morning. We're going to incorporate some networking into the event, so make sure you take advantage of that later. That's going to be in the second half of the program. But what we're going to do first is we are going to actually introduce you to our presenter today. Now, the title for today's presentation is really Forward Together, Fighting the Pandemic from the Front Line. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually put her over into the spotlight now so that as I'm talking about her, you guys can kind of see who I'm talking about. After caring for more than 32,000 patients through the pandemic and having administered more than 100,000 doses of the vaccine, and I'm sure that number is higher now, Atlantic Health System continues to play a central role in helping New Jersey fight COVID-19. So here's your chance to hear from the front lines. Amy Perry is the CEO of the hospital division. She's the Senior VP of Integrated Care Delivery of all Atlantic Health Systems, right? And we'll partner with NJBIA's Women's Business Leaders today for we're going to have a very open virtual discussion. So we're going to talk about all the incredible things that a team can achieve together, how women leaders are critical voice in our crucial decision making, and how your team can learn from these lessons from the front line. So we're going to make this a very casual Q&A. You're going to have both of us on the screen as we're going through the open dialogue. I'm going to encourage you and invite you to please put questions in on the chat. And as they come up, I will make sure to feed them over into Amy. So Amy, welcome and thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. Very, very happy to. I love the group. I was looking, I mean, first of all the wonderful women on the call and just, you know, having a smaller group gives us a great opportunity for a conversation. So thank you.
It really does. It really does. And before I forget, I want to make sure we're staying to schedule. So I'm actually going to put our lovely little timer on that I normally would keep in the background. So bear with me. And there we go, because we want to be punctual for everybody. So you guys have had a lot going on, to say the least. Tell us how you are managing it. First of all, yourself personally, like how are you managing to stay sane through all of the craziness?
So I actually had this conversation a week or so ago, but I'll tell you that it's about a year since we started down our COVID journey, and we had our first patients at Atlantic Health, and the two words that come to mind are courage and crazy. And I'll tell you a little bit about that. But, you know, a year ago, when we first started taking COVID patients, you know, it's hard to describe how scary that was. We didn't know how the disease or the virus was transmitted. Start with the most scary, right? We didn't know how to treat it. We weren't sure. First of all, we would send a test. We would know a week later whether someone had COVID or not. So just crazy. There were not a lot of tools in our toolbox when we first started this journey. And Atlantic Health being, you know, basically one train stop out of New York City, we were on the first line of getting that enormous surge in April. And the only word that I can think of is just courage. You know, more than 60% of our workforce are women. So, you know, we're nurses, we're doctors, we're clinicians, we're patient care techs, we're environmental workers, we're dietitians. We are there on the front line taking care of patients when we don't know how the virus is spread. Are we going to bring it home to our families? How difficult this is, and how women, I believe, truly care about caregiving. It is their role. Whether we like it or not, for most of us, that is in us deep. Yeah. And so not only were our people on the ground giving beyond what you can imagine, caring for people, but then they had to go home and care for their families. And the courage that took, I will forever be just, you know, amazed and by it. And it gives me respect for what we can do together. And, you know, thinking about moving forward, how do we bottle this? There's a lot of pieces that I could get into. I think that where I started a year ago, it was a sprint. We just didn't know where it was going to end. We didn't know when the curve was going to flatten. We were running 100 miles an hour, and we were not going to fail our patients. When the curve started flattening and it became apparent that this was a marathon, I think that we kind of changed how we dealt with this. But before I pivot back to you and to what you think people might be more interested in, I will give you a moment of crazy in the beginning of this, because we all have our moments of crazy. I'm going to share.
I don't think any of us have really stopped having moments of crazy.
So I'm just going to divulge one moment of crazy, although for sure there have been a lot. So early in the pandemic, and I'm sure, you know, it was all over the news, it was this concept of PPE, personal protective equipment. And again, we didn't know how this was spread, but we knew we needed masks. We needed more masks than we had ever even thought about needing. So, and my CFO partner, who is the best, was, you know, on the phone 24 hours a day. And I always say with every global cartel that would sell a mask at $10 a piece. I mean, we would do anything to protect our team. But I decided one night that I was maybe going to sew masks for the world.
And you're taking it all on yourself. That's it.
My contribution, right? I'm in my kitchen with my sewing machine, figuring out how to make a mask. And, you know, I think it's just but it says something not about me, but about all women, in that we will do whatever we can, whatever it takes to contribute to solutions. And my little crazy evening of mask making is just an example of all the women who throughout our organization thought of the craziest ways to take care of our patients, and just allowing that creativity was, it's been so exciting to watch. But there's so many places I could go with this, and obviously the marathon and women. But Lorena, what do you think when you think about the pandemic and how you reflected on healthcare, and where our team played a role in this whole world?
Well, I think it's interesting when you're bringing that up. I think as a business owner, we're seeing things a little bit differently. The ones that you're having on the call right now, we're all business owners, or we're all C-level executives at companies, and we're all trying to figure out not only how are we keeping ourselves safe, but how are we keeping our team safe, right? So the illustrations and the examples that the big players like Atlantic Health are doing is really what we're going to try to model afterwards, right? Obviously on a much smaller scale, because the budgets and the sizing and everything is slightly different, but trying to understand how we all thought, okay, this is going to be a short-term solution, like you guys, right? This is going to be like done and over, and we're going to be back to normal. And then it's like, okay, now any minute now. And even now, as you guys are launching the vaccines, and like I said, I'm sure that number of 100,000 doses of vaccines, you guys have surely way exceeded that by now. How do we transition back to, and I hate to say the word, the new normal, everybody talks about it, but how do we transition back to something like that, using the healthcare solutions as partners and helping us educate our employees and what is safe, what is not safe, what are we comfortable doing, what are we not comfortable doing? How do we make accommodations? And obviously there's a whole legal aspect of things that we're not even going to cover as to what we're required or not required to do, but just from like the resources, and you may not even know the answers yet, because maybe you guys haven't thought of them yet as to how you're actually going to do the community outreach, but not just to an individual outreach of get vaccinated, but the employer side. How do you communicate to employers like, look, we have your back, you'll be able to send them for testing or something along those lines?
No, great, all great points and questions. First of all, Atlantic Health has given 215,000 vaccines. Wow. So that's huge. And we can see collectively across the country how I believe we're starting to have an impact. But April and May are very important months. We need to accelerate the rate of vaccine delivery in order to get to that everybody's been talking about herd immunity, so that we can actually have a shot at normalcy. I wowould say as, we watch the CDC just like all of you do in terms of guidance, and, it's like a pretty, it's an algorithm, right? If you have been vaccinated and somebody else been vaccinated, you can be in a room together, but not with anybody.
You need a chart and a map and like draw, like a CD chart for a wedding. Yeah.
Right. So there's like there's guidelines and then there's reality, right? So what we promote, and I do myself personally, is I wear a mask every time I leave my house. I wear it in every store. I wear it in a car. I don't care if you're vaccinated or not. I wear a mask, and I try to maintain 6 feet of distance, because quite frankly, we don't know what the variants mean. We have a kind of an idea of how things are transmitted, what vaccines might provide some protection against UK variants, Brazilian variants, other variants. But honest to God, there is still a lot that's not known. So I just follow, what I would call common sense rules. People are getting more lax, and that does, concern me in terms of what the disease prevalence will become. And we are crazy at Atlantic Health about watching our predictive analytics. We test about 2,000 people a day. We look for our positivity rates, anything that blips. We look for areas where there might be more than a cluster in a community. We're trying to be incredibly proactive at knowing where we might have a surge. But even with all that sort of data tracking, you cannot prepare for what might be our next surge. So from an advice perspective, and I think, from a business owner perspective, I think that there is a change in this remote work culture.
Oh, absolutely. I saw that right away. I mean, it's amazing how many companies we're never working from home. We're not allowing that huge mentality shift that's happened.
And it's huge. And I would say it's good and bad. Okay. And especially for women. So let's look at the good and bad.
When we're talking about crazy moments, we're just going to have more of them.
Right. I mean, the bad is, and it's been discussed a lot over the last year, is that women are losing their networking, their normal networking challenges. So hats off to you and other organizations like yours that are creating opportunities for women to continue to connect, because it's very isolating working from home. So although it offers us some solutions to childcare, even though it's not like for people with young kids, the kids are still there. So, it really becomes an incredible juggling act for people. So, as employers, to the extent that we're supporting people who need to remote work, but we're also understanding the challenges with that. And we're trying to help women continue to progress in their careers with those new rules, with that new workplace norm.
Yeah. I think it's, I think back to, what was it, 3 years ago, when that guy was doing an interview and his kid walked in and everyone posted it all over and it went so viral, like, oh, guys working from home and a kid comes in. And it's like, please, like, between the women that I know, I've had women that are doing their meetings, and they're still have newborns and they decide to go back to work and they're literally nursing with a shawl covered up and saying, look, I'm sorry, I'm going to turn off the video because now I'm going to nurse the kid because I'm still working. And they're still typing with one hand. Like, the whole mentality of being at home and being able to multitask definitely has changed, but it brings about its own challenges from an employer perspective and from just the mental capacity of how much can we actually tolerate, right? So keeping that balance. So your staff really can't work from home.
Right. For the most part, we have it's not a remote work culture because we have to
care. Yeah.
Although there has been some change, there's a lot more telehealth, there's a lot more people looking for alternative ways to get care. So I would say that there's additional opportunities for remote work, but it's still a person to person or industry.
Now, within the organization, the folks that are not meeting with patients, the folks, because we were just talking about, for those of you that are joining us on the meeting, we were talking right before we went live about Teams and how Microsoft Teams has become really like the go-to tool that a lot of us are using. So I know you mentioned you guys just transitioned into that. So has that made it easier to allow for some of the staff that maybe doesn't need to be in the office, like maybe your accounting or your bookkeeping teams, to be a little bit more remote, to kind of allow for some of that flexibility as well within Atlantic Health?
It's really a great point. So we have been a culture of really we don't work from home. I would say generally, that has not been the culture that we support. So last year was a really big deal for us to start allowing more remote work. And there's been a reluctance, just to be open about our own struggles and decision making about remote work and what's lost in remote work. In terms of team building and the culture. And there are a lot of benefits for being together. But I think that we're, as an organization, trying to accelerate our evolution in allowing people to work remotely. And it's been tough for us. It's been a tough decision-making process and in making those new exceptions.
It's actually something that I think not just you, but I think a lot of employers are struggling with, right? You lose so much of that creativity and that natural team building, like you were saying. But it is something we all have to consider. And as much as you guys, are almost, I don't want to say it this way, but I mean, you're setting the example sometimes in some areas. So it's great that you're being able to be open about the weaknesses that you do have, because it allows other business owners to realize and recognize, okay, well, maybe I don't have it 100% perfectly well organized or set up. How do I get to that point so that I can allow for as much as I possibly can?
Because we have an in-person business, and I think, probably a lot of you are also working on, in-person business, whether it's retail or restaurants or things that are very difficult to do 100% online. We've had to make a lot of, I would say, big investments in childcare.
Yeah.
We had childcare centers, we have childcare centers that we run, but we had to expand that to YMCAs and other ways to support our team to be able to have childcare options. To me, that has been the number one challenge for our working moms is, having to make this choice to leave their kid. Am I leaving my child in a safe place while I go to work, because I have to go to work to make money? And it's just been a tremendous burden on women generally. And how, as business owners, can we help with that? And it's expensive to help with that.
Yeah.
And right. And not all of us are nonprofits. I mean, Atlantic Health is a nonprofit organization, mission driven. So we are patients first, employees first, finances next. So not every business can act like that and make big investments in childcare and other things. So how do we, as a women community, as a working mom community, how can we help each other get through this? And I'm very curious about cooperatives. How do we form communities together so that we don't have a huge gender recession, which is what is being predicted right now? And I can see it, and I'm afraid of it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to see us go backwards. So, and I can't see a way out unless we find a way to support each other in this.
You bring such a great point, and I would love to hear from those of us that are in the room, because I know a lot of the folks that are listening to us right now are moms themselves, have kids. Maybe they're older because they're just in that teenage bracket where they don't, quote unquote, need us as much, or at least that's what they say. But in reality, they could probably sleep until 1 o'clock in the afternoon if you didn't wake them up. So, there's a huge shift in that. And I know that Vicky Hart works for Paradigm Marketing, who is our marketing sponsor, but Rachel, the founder for Paradigm Marketing, actually had that idea of herself. She's like, I need to find a co-op or collaborative. I can't do this by myself. She's got 2 little kids. She has a nanny, but what if the nanny can't come in, et cetera, et cetera. She was one of the first few people that I know of that reached out to other women business owners. Casey Gosell, who's a partner at Mandelbaum Salzburg, I believe, is one of them, who has kids her age. They were literally about like the exact same preschool age. Got a teacher to literally watch her and like 2 other kids so that they could have a cohort, like to basically start keeping them together so that they could continue to work. So I think you're right. Being creative in that daycare solution is huge. So how do you take that approach for your own employees? And how do you think that we can kind of implement that on a community basis?
Right. That's what I'm trying to figure out, because of course, we're talking, we invest millions of dollars into childcare only. So it is a little bit different, and I think that the idea of creating a corporate collaborative in this space is the best way to do it, so that together, maybe buy childcare services less expensively, or there could be a flex work rotation among our team members, so that, okay, I've got the kids on Monday and I'll work Tuesday through Friday, and employers, being receptive to those sort of new ways to approach schedules, when we can, in order. And I think that that's really important. I'm fortunate my kids are all out of the house. And I think when you get to kids that are independent, what I'm very worried about is pipeline. So if you were talking to a mostly CEO population here, pretty much everyone on the phone probably has older children. But what could happen with people with younger kids is that's who I feel like really lose ground. And I think that that's been clearly documented. Working moms lose 4 years in sort of growing, which just leads to this continuous compensation inequity, because we're running 4 years behind because we're taking care of kids. So how can we help our employees with younger kids stay on track, not get off track because of their responsibilities with kids. And I do think, you know, childcare is number one, and then flex schedules is probably number two. And then how we creatively solve these problems together and keep our pipeline robust and full of our next leaders, or we're going to continue to, you know, to have these dwindling numbers.
Now, and again, this might be something that you guys haven't really figured out quite yet because we're still in the midst of everything else. But when you're talking about that pipeline of trying to keep the leaders and trying to keep everybody going down that path of success, you're obviously working on strategies to not fix, but try to find a solution that can be feasible with flex time and daycare. What about like the learning opportunities? Because, you know, for a long time, there was continuing education credits that your staff needed. There was just growth opportunities. A lot of that has been placed on the back burner right now because there's no budgets, there's no time, there's only so many hours in a day. So going forward, that's going to be another thing that we're going to have to add into the balance. How do you balance the nurturing of education for growth?
Right, talent, right? And so I'm really focused on this right now, and I will tell you, I'm looking for a senior physician leader, and the person who's retiring is currently a woman senior physician leader, and I am doing a national search. And I'm trying to replace this person, and I'm not getting a lot of women candidates to replace my woman leader. I obviously am very concerned about that. The search agency told me that only 8% of the people that are currently in that position are women. It's a wow. And what it made me realize is that if we don't keep our pipelines robust, there's nobody to pick from in our, how do we pull people into those jobs? So to your point, I'm creating a new position at Atlantic Health, which is an associate position to this, position throughout our organization. So we can start giving women and diversity candidates an opportunity to learn the skills needed to start on that pathway. So hopefully in 5 years or 10 years, we have an enormous number of people to choose from, to pull people up from different backgrounds and have different voices at the table. And we all have to do it in our own ways, look for those different voices. It is an echo chamber at the CEO level, and we've, one by one, and all of you on the show today, thank goodness, are changing that. And I'm just so proud to be a part of this group with women leaders who are breaking that barrier and, setting a new standard and making it real.
It's something that is so true that and I give you so many kudos for actually being proactive enough to be looking at that and creating that associate position, because I think if anything, what this pandemic has allowed us to see is not only the weaknesses in whatever processes that we had to handle those last minute emergencies, but also to give us the opportunity to see where we can grow from it, right? What can we do better so that if this happens again, we're not so blindsided by the crisis? And by you creating that associate position, you're really creating your own next step of like, how can we bring this on so that we have somebody that can help us do some other areas? So that's huge.
I agree. And also for all of you in whatever companies you run, we're going to pay for this position. It's not a full-time position. It'll be in, part of somebody else's job. But honestly, if you even just give people the opportunity to have more responsibility, a title, it might not even cost anything, because women and people in different backgrounds that don't have a pathway or an opportunity might just take the job, let's say it's a 10%, 20% job, to start shadowing, getting mentored, getting understood without any compensation. So in terms of how do you budget this into, an organization, you would be surprised what we might be able to pull up together.
And I'm reading some of the comments right now, and everyone is totally impressed with this because they're right. You know, it's much better to hire somebody. Somebody just posted, it's much better to hire somebody. Melissa Broadman posted, it's much better to hire somebody for a role who has 80% of the skills and perhaps never held the title to build diversity and really groom them from within. So that's huge. I would imagine that as you guys are doing your recaps and your strategy sessions internally to see what did we do well? What did we not do so well? Where can we improve upon? I would imagine you're doing that constant enough and being open to the possibility of what other areas do we possibly need to fill or maintain in order to kind of avoid or improve upon if this should happen again?
Talent is an enterprise goal for us this year at the highest level, because we see how, especially a year later, people are exhausted, traumatized, the resilience, people are running on, very low reserves. And so how do we put our arms around everybody now and let them know, 210 doses later, we are going to see the finish line. We are going to get to the other side of this. How do we pull together and start looking forward, looking to the future, and finding these new pathways for people? So there's a sense of energy that we can create in our organization instead of just, it's important to reflect. So I don't want to say, oh, let's forget what happened. We have to all reflect.
History repeats itself at the end of the day. And I think we've all learned that. So you have to kind of be aware of the lessons you learn.
That's right. But now could be a really good time to start looking forward. What is it? Hopefully our kids will go back to school. That is a huge burden. If I had to homeschool my kids, I could barely do homework with my kids. Okay. And they're all, thank God, college graduates, not because of me. Okay. But I mean, holy moly, I don't know what to say to these women that have been homeschooling. I mean, they are my hero. I can't imagine.
My sister has 3 little kids and she's a teacher. And every time I talk to her, I'm like, I don't even know how to tell you that you are amazing. Like, you are just amazing. I could not handle it.
And look at how many of our teachers are women.
Yeah.
So how do we, I'm sorry, this is going to become a social conversation, but how do we reinvest in our teachers? Holy moly. I mean, and just celebrate all of those things that we had to take on last year, so just, again, amazing feats of courage and creativity that came out of last year.
And I think there's a lot of truth to that. I think I was reading an article the other day and I was listening to a podcast too that was saying, from all of our moments of crisis as a society, right, worldwide, we've all grown. The biggest technological advances, the biggest scientific advances have all happened during the time of crisis. So we have to embrace that. We have to take it and be like, okay, this was ugly, this was painful, but look how much we grew from it.
Right. It was a year of conquer. And I'm very excited. And I see that, growth comes out of pain or crisis. And honest to God, that is really the truth. I'm sure we all, as much as it was painful, we all grew from this in different ways. We learned that what we thought we could do more.
It's just when you think you can't do anything harder, it all of a sudden goes, oh, geez, I did that. Like, how did that
happen? Right. And then maybe we stopped prioritizing some things that weren't as important as we thought they were. And I've been reading women stories and from our own team members, I think that there were a lot of people that I've read their stories and they had this idea of having this perfectionist approach to certain ways they, maybe made dinner or took care of their families and did all these things that they thought were perfect. And they were just able to forgive themselves for doing it any way that worked for them. And I think that kind of idea of, this new normal, I'm going to go back to your first thing. I think this new normal is women forgiving themselves and not trying to fill out a checklist and doing what works for them and their family, even if it doesn't look like anything they've seen in a movie and a TV and read in a book. And we're just going to move forward together in a little different way.
I think that's completely spot on. And I'll end this last segment. We have about 5 minutes left. So if anyone has any other questions, please let me know through the chat. But I think one of the things that you just mentioned that I would love to kind of understand how you're opening that up is you mentioned you're reading women's stories from within your own organization. So did you guys create some sort of open forum so that the staff can share what they went through? Tell us a little bit about that.
We did, and I think that I would highly recommend that for everyone in terms of therapy. I don't know, there's probably a better way to look at this, but what we did was put together a year opportunity for people to post their reflections. This is an internal, this is not a public way to communicate. But privately, at least within our group, we gave people the opportunity to tell their stories.
That's awesome.
And I think that that's a really important piece of moving forward, is recognizing those moments of courage and crazy and heroism and sadness, deep sadness, for a lot of things that our team has been through, so that they can move forward. And it's remarkable. So.
That is beautiful. I have to say that I give you guys again a lot of praise for doing that, because there was a lot of ugliness that was seen, obviously, I'm sure, by your staff, not just within their workplace, but what they saw outside in their own homes and what they had to sacrifice, and giving them an outlet to be able to talk about it, even if it's just out there in the universe, right? In the internal universe. Yeah. It's still so therapeutic. I mean, I'm a big believer that when you just kind of mention the problem and mention it out there, it just kind of takes away its strength, right? You take away the strength that ugliness has over you, and you're able to kind of move forward a little bit. So thank you so much for allowing that. I think that is fantastic. We have a couple of minutes left, and I know that that's probably going to be the one thing that I'm taking out of your Q&A today, is giving an opportunity for employees to really share their perspective and just their own members. And I know we do that within the NJBIA community already, but I think that's a really great tool. Is there anything else you want to give us before we kind of sign off from your part here?
No, just keep doing what you're doing. So proud to have had this opportunity, Lorena, to talk to this group of women leaders, women up and comers, because together we have to support each other. We have to continue to fight for gender equality. It's not going to happen unless we're all together on this. There's a lot of opportunity for this to move backwards. Let's not let that happen together. So just thank you for letting me speak to you today. And I look forward to supporting the group moving forward.
I love this. This was so great. And I'm so glad, that I was able to fill in for Roseanne. She's usually the co-host and the interviewer. So I'm glad that I was able to fill in for her and get a chance to speak with you, because I'm very, very impressed with the work that you are doing with Atlantic Health and keeping your staff sane through all this crazy. So thank you so much for joining us. And I know that you have other meetings to hop off to, so I appreciate you giving us the time this morning, because I know you're a busy gal there.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Take care. All right. For those of you that are staying on with us, of course, we're going to go into our breakout rooms. It is exactly 12:08. But before I do that, I'm going to, of course, bring on my lovely Vicky Hart, who I love to see all the time.
Lorena, we're like, our ships are like, we're like planets in constant orbit. And way to bring out your inner Oprah today. I mean, geez Louise, talk about like.
You're so kind. Keep going.
No,
I'm just kidding.
You've always said you're so comfortable to me on screen. I'm like, you are just like, you're ready for Diane Sawyer.
You're so good.
Move away, Katie.
There's my next career.
It's ready. Jeopardy, watch out. She's ready.
There you go. I'm going to let you have the spotlight, my dear.
You're terrific. What an amazing topic today. And thank you, Amy Perry, for sharing, which is so relevant, to where we are today, because who would, we're 3 months into the new year, and we were told, at least I was told, or at least I believed, that this year was going to be different, but it strangely feels the same. Does anybody else feel this way? With the uncertainty of the weather, I don't know, it's still cold outside, and vaccine waiting lines are like trying to get an Instacart order back in May of last year. Or like divorce rates are clearly on the rise, and perhaps there was a little too much shelter in place. When things seem out of control, it is super important to focus on the positive and put your energy into what you can control. And I'm a quasi control freak, so this sounds amazing to me. So how can you do that? Focus on your business growth. Ask yourself, about your audience. Have their needs changed? And your message, does it still resonate a year later or even a couple months later? And your outreach, where's your audience now? So if one or more of these is not crystal clear to you, your efforts may not land, and you may result in lost time, lost money, and sadly, some lost mojo. So if you're interested in learning how we can help you gain control of your business growth, I'm offering a complimentary 30-minute strategy session to give you a tip or two in feeling good and getting control of your business growth. I'm Vicki Hart, Director of Client Engagement at Paradigm Marketing and Design, and that is your Marketing Minute.
Thank you.
How'd I do? All right, it was a little longer than a minute. But
that's all right. I gave it to you only because we're running a little bit ahead of schedule. So thank you so much.
It wasn't 12:11.
Exactly. But I appreciate obviously having Paradigm Marketing being our Marketing Minute sponsor. I just want to once again, just share our partner slide, because I do think it's important that we recognize the partnerships that Kate has actually done. So Kate, while we have a couple of extra seconds, I'm actually going to pull up the slide if you want to just give kudos and thanks to our partners. And let me bring that up so that you can actually see it on the screen if that ever comes up for me. Here we go.
Absolutely. I'm so grateful that you're able to do that. NJM is a longstanding partner of NJBIA. Investors Bank and PSE&G are partners at the foundation level. They support just about every single thing that we do, and we're so grateful. And of course, our event partners, DeTorres and DeGeorge, Family Law. Everybody knows Roseanne. She's a wonderful attorney. She helped me lose about 190 pounds a couple of years ago, FYI.
You look amazing.
Thank you. And of course, Paradigm Marketing and Design, Vicki, and our Marketing Minute. They are just incredible supporters of BIA and this organization. And we couldn't do this without the support of all of these amazing partners. And so we just thank them so, so much.
Oh, thank you so much. All right, with that, we are going to go into our breakout rooms. But before we do, I want to just remind all of you that are watching us that we do have several events coming up. So I know that, Kate, you mentioned that we have the event link for September up already on the website.
It's coming. It's not coming up yet, but the link for the April WBLC meeting is up and ready to go.
Perfect. So we are actually going to post that on there. And we actually have Andrea, who is going to be speaking with us. And as a matter of fact, we have this great image that her team came up with us. We're going to have Andrea, who is Andrea Diaz from partner at SKC and Company, driving business growth with data analytics. She is a powerhouse and she is really, really good at what she does. And so we're so excited to be hearing that. So Tuesday, April 27th, please mark your calendars. And I just put the link on the chat so that you guys can go ahead and register for that. And I believe that's all the housekeeping things that I have. We're going to go ahead and start our breakout rooms. So I'm going to do the breakout rooms. And again, you'll have about 15 minutes in the room. You'll make sure that everyone has a chance to speak. You will have a timer on the upper right-hand corner. I recommend you switch back over to gallery view rather than speaker view so that you can see everyone in the room. And you will have, give or take, about 2 minutes per person, but just make sure you're allowing for everyone to speak. And that's pretty much it. If anyone has any questions, I will be sitting back here making sure that everyone has been in a room and has no technical glitches before I go into the room myself. So we are going to go ahead. Oh, and of course, before we do that, just a reminder, NJBIA, Paradigm Marketing are NJBIA and Paradigm Marketing partners in Table for Four. If you have not joined us for Table for Four networking, it's every Monday at noon. We would love to see you there. It is a fantastic networking event and it happens every Monday at noon. There's only 4 people in a room, so you really get a chance to network really, really well. So
I'll drop the link, Lorena.
Yes, thank you, my dear. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and assign you all into the breakout room. So you should see that come up right now.